everyone. Just looking for Pastor Bland. Well, thank you all for joining me here this evening. I'm going to cut right to the chase. I know you're all here tonight to hear about results. And I do have some results to report. Yes, it is true, Zadarius Smith is coming to the Lions. Well, I know you're all here to not just hear about the Lions. I will give you a few updates as we close out not just the NFL trade deadline, but also another important deadline here today, of course, the closing of our polls in this historic general election. Now, just about an hour ago, the polls in the final 4 counties in Central Time Zone in our state closed, and voting in the 2024 general election is now, for the most part, over. You know, today was a day that was full not of chaos or confusion or fear, but of confidence, celebration, and yes, pride. I want to begin by thanking all of the voters, election officials, and election workers who participated in this historic election. You made democracy work. We know that the eyes of the nation are on Michigan once again, and we have shown the country that we are determined, enthusiastic, and full of grit. Our track record in Michigan is solid, and the country can again be assured that our elections are safe, secure, and accessible. Partnerships were critical to our success today. Our office has worked with business leaders, faith leaders, and many others to reach voters in communities all across the state with the information that they need to make their voices heard. And I'm honored to be joined tonight by Reverend Dr. Stephen Bland Jr., here with me tonight to talk about the work that he led this year to empower faith leaders to be trusted voices for voters in this election. Pastor Bland, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Secretary of State Benson, and to all of you tonight who have gathered on this early night, because it's going to be a lot longer than this. But I'm thankful that we tonight can pause at least and be grateful that in the state of Michigan that we've made at least voting a safe experience. We've made and helped to make voting one that people who want to exercise their voice can exercise that voice, because polling places should be safe passage. It should be an experience where people, as I've witnessed today, can bring families, can bring generations, and people can vote their conscience and vote their convictions without any intimidation, without any intrepidation or any fear. The Faith United to Save Democracy, which is a peacekeeping poll chaplain work of chaplains of persons who are multi-faith, multi-denominational, various persons from different walks of life, black, white, Hispanic, all coming together. And we trained over the last several months that we might be able to have a person at each polling place where we are able to do so. So persons who are coming can have the ability to feel as if that coming to vote in this location is something that not only is a safe thing to do, but a sacred thing to do. And so we like to report, again, in 2020, when we did this the first time, we had 173 poll chaplains across the state of Michigan, and it appears we had about 162 in Michigan this year. Over 1,400 were trained across 10 states, battleground states and others, and Michigan, being at the top of the nation, leads the way again. So we want to, again, be thankful and grateful that it's not only because of the peacekeeping efforts of the chaplains, but also because our state had laws that were enacted so that voter suppression and things of that nature could be minimized. We are grateful for the Secretary of State for championing that cause, for making voting something that gives us accessibility. 9 days of early voting helps us so it does not have to have all the count in one day and have the kind of situation we had at Huntington Place last year. Having the ability to start the absentee count earlier. We are on to a historic early vote where we had almost 3.5 million votes cast before today. And many of that comes because we've stretched and given laws and people an opportunity. Working moms and people who have challenges on voting day need more time and more opportunity and more access to voting and to the poll. the opportunity to make decisions. So these are things that are helpful. I'm grateful again for our Secretary of State, her staff, for our governor, and for other persons in Michigan to make that of such. And we are glad to partner with them by making voting again safe and the passageway the kind of way that we want to be proud of. We, particularly in the African American community, are grateful because we have had a history through Jim Crow and other places where we were prohibited from voting. So to look at the ancestors and now see that we can go on from having to count how many jelly beans are in a jar or how many bubbles in a bar of soap, but to watch and see generations walk up today able to bring people freely to vote was just an honor and a privilege, and something that I know that my parents and others would have loved to live to see. And as we move forward now, I'm grateful to say that we've gone from picking cotton to picking presidents, and hopefully we'll have a great outcome on tonight. God bless you, and thank you for these moments.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pastor Bland. I'm really grateful for your leadership and for your partnership in ensuring Michiganders were safe and our elections were secure this year. Today, we are celebrating a very successful election. It began by the celebration of a successful early in-person voting period all throughout our state. As we know already, before the polls even opened, 3.3 million Michiganders had voted in this election. And then throughout today, the final day to vote in this election, we saw citizens all across the political spectrum show up proudly to cast their vote in this historic election and participate in our democracy. My morning started with a dance party at my local precinct here in Detroit. And then as I traveled to polling places all throughout the state, I encountered enthusiastic, joyful gatherings of voters who were excited to participate in this election. You know, Michiganders stepped up and showed up today. And I was particularly inspired by the number of moms and dads who made it a family affair, bringing their young kids with them to vote and prepare these future voters to proudly inherit our democracy. You know, one government teacher in Cadillac brought his entire class of students with him to witness the voting process. And I saw more young people show up than I ever remember seeing in any election cycle, many of whom were excited to vote in their first election ever. Nearly 22,000 Michiganders registered and voted today, many of them under the age of 30. And not to be outdone, some septuagenarians were also first-time voters today, and others who showed up in their 90s had been voting in every election since they turned 18. Those were the winners of this election. They are our success story. The record-breaking number of Michiganders who cast ballots and the clerks and election workers whose efforts made it possible for them to do so. That's our victory, and that's what we're celebrating tonight. Now, we'll know more in the coming days and hours about how this election turned out. But as of right now, we know we are on track for record-breaking turnout in this election. We already know more than 3.4 million votes were cast throughout the mail or early voting process, including the mail-in ballots received today. And of the 2.3 million ballots that were sent to voters who voted from home, 94% were already returned as of 7:30 p.m. tonight, and the vast majority of those had been processed and fed into the tabulators before today, with the rest expected to be tallied in the coming hours as clerks check in the final ones submitted to their offices that were submitted to their offices before 8 p.m. today. So we'll know for sure in the hours ahead how many Michiganders turned out to vote in person today, but we expect it was at least as many who showed up 4 years ago. And from our team members across the state, we know that things also went smoothly in precincts across Michigan. Any issues were minor and resolved quickly and were not widespread but isolated. Polling places were by and large calm and efficient and energetic. People were excited to vote today. The tireless work of more than 1,600 local clerks and thousands of election workers all across the state made those celebrations possible, made that pride possible. And, you know, let me just say something about our clerks for 1 second. They have adapted to a plethora of new voting laws in record-breaking speed. They implemented new processes. They stood strong against attempts to sow confusion and doubt in the integrity of their work, and did it all with a smile and with pride to be participating in this historic election. So that's what we're celebrating tonight. It's no question that our democracy has prevailed because of the people in the process today and the voters who took advantage of their options to vote in this election. Now, it may take a few more hours before we know for sure the results of this presidential election here in Michigan. I'm hopeful that we will be the first of the 7 battleground states to announce our unofficial results